Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melissa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to this week's episode, number 102. And today I'm really thrilled to share with you an interview that I recently did with McLean Robbins. McLean has become a great friend and is the VP of Marketing at MBO Partners. MBO Partners, if you're not familiar with it, is a company that helps connect independent consultants and micro business owners with enterprise client engagement opportunities. So really they're in the business of connecting you as an independent with opportunities that enterprise clients of theirs are seeking independence to fulfill. So that is what they do. They have such a wealth of resources for the independents as well as for the enterprise clients who engage with those independents like you and I. So that is what MBO is. As I said, McLean is the VP of marketing over there at MBO Partners. And every year, I think this is the 12th year now, every year, MBO and McLean have basically conducted research that's called the State of Independence. And so I asked McLean to come on the podcast this week to talk with us about what those findings were. She did that last year as well. You can go back and find it on episode 40. This year, she's graciously returning to share with us what she and the team that did this research have found as it relates to the state of what we do as independents, the state of independence. And so at a very, very high level, what the report came back with is the theme that it's centered around is that independents, like you and I, are happier than we've ever been, healthier than we've ever been, both business wise and physically, I think, and then also wealthier. We're making more money, we're finding more opportunity. There is more openness from enterprise clients to engage consultants and independent consultants specifically. And so there's so much to be gleaned from the research that McLean is about to share with us. And we just sat down for a conversation about what the findings were. And she helps interpret those about how you can make the findings that are in that report actionable for you and your business. So I'm excited for you to hear all of this. You'll also hear McLean talk a little bit about, not only is this what she does from a corporate perspective, but she also believes in independence so much that she's created her own independent business where she has a luxury travel agency. So I think that's really fun too, that she's really practicing what she preaches as well. So with that, I'm excited for you to hear this episode with McLean Robbins of MBO Partners. And again, we're diving into the State of Independence reports. So it gives you those industry trends and helps you to really take it down to the level that you can make it actionable for yourself in your consulting business, stand out in your consulting business, and gain more business, have more autonomy, and ultimately make the impact that you want to be making. So without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy you're here again today. And today I have such a treat for us. McLean Robbins is back from MBO Partners. We've kind of made this an annual thing now, McLean. Here to talk
So appreciate it. Hi.
Yes, so happy you're here. She's here to talk with us again about the MBO Partners report that she manages every year as the VP of Marketing at MBO. And it's the State of Independence and gives us a really good macro view of what the world of independence looks like and what the trends are. So, McLean, I would love for you to introduce yourself and kind of kick us off here.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Melissa, I am so grateful to be back. Thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure to talk to you and get to be on your podcast. We love it. We love your audience and we love all that you do for us at MBO. So I am Vice President of Marketing at MBO Partners. They've been here about 7.5 years, which is nearly twice the lifespan of the average employee in America these days. We can certainly talk about that. But I've been here for such a long time because I've gotten to do really exciting things like bring our state of independence to life. State of Independence is the longest and deepest dive into the American independent workforce. It is now in its 12th year of publication. And in my role at MBO, I lead all of our research, all of our content, as well as all the marketing for the company. And we are a platform that connects high end independents and enterprise organizations, making it easy for them to do business together.
Thank you. That's such a good introduction. And if you haven't yet gone over to the MBO website, it's such a treasure trove of resources for independence. So go check that out. And we'll put the link to that in the show notes as well as to the specific link to the State of Independence report, which is what we're really focused on for the most part here today. So
Great.
let's start off, McLean, and tell us about what the State of Independence. You've given us a little bit about what it is. Tell us a little bit about what changes you've seen over the last 12 years.
Certainly. So, the State of Independence, as I've said, longest running, deepest dive into the American independent workforce. So, we've seen a few really interesting key trends emerge. So, at a macro level, what we've seen is the explosive growth of the American independent workforce. It's now 64.6 million people large. That is a massive number. And I want to say it's at least triple in size from where we started back 12 years ago. But really, we've seen an explosive post COVID growth in the American independent workforce. And we look at, again, size, sentiments, different trends that are growing within the workforce. So we can dive into any of those nuances. But the thing that's really interesting to me here is that not only have we seen the size grow, and we look at independents who are doing this part time, full time, occasionally, but we've seen the happiness, healthiness, and what we would call sort of control and ownership measures for independence skyrocket. So, what I'm seeing is a workforce that's vibrant, strong, growing, happier, and more secure than ever before. So, pretty much any trend we're going to look at, we're going to see that trend having explosive growth.
Mm, that's amazing. You touched on security. I think that's something that really is one of the biggest things that independents are looking for is that security. Tell us more about what that means, how you're seeing people feel more secure.
Sure. Security is a huge factor in whether or not somebody's going to go and stay independent. And in what we might call an insecure economy or insecure economic situation, we're really excited. We surveyed in July of last year. So we certainly were seeing economic uncertainty at that time. And what we're seeing is when asked full time independence against people who are traditionally employed, we say, do you feel more secure being independent than you would having a traditional job? That's the actual question that's asked of these people. And this year, we see somewhere in the 67% range of independents saying, yes, I feel more secure than if I had a traditional job. And we see about 1 in 3 full time employees saying, I actually think independence is more secure than having a traditional job. And we've seen that number greatly tick up over recent years, and that number has accelerated and grown significantly post COVID. But one of the reasons that we see this is independents are spreading their risk across multiple clients. And so if
Mm.
you serve 4 to 6 clients in a year and you get reduced by one of them or your project ends, you have other income streams coming in and you have a plan to go get that next project. Whereas a traditional employee, maybe they have a side hustle, maybe they're freelancing on the side, maybe they have a spouse, maybe they don't. But by and large, they're dependent on that one employer. And so previously, we saw people saying independence is risky. I don't know how I would get clients. But as structures and work evolved to better cater to independence and better cater to people coming in and doing strategic consulting with organizations, we see people finding it easier. And quite frankly, they see it as less risky because there's more eggs to balance in the basket.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. One of the trends that came through in the report is that independents are changing the way that they're landing new work. And so I'd love to dive into that more, especially from the lens of those kind of strategy and management type consultants that you see that are the audience here on this podcast.
Yeah, I would say there are sort of 3 major trends that are changing the way people get work. One, we see people, and this is a little bit tangential to the other 2 trends, so I'll start with it. We see people who are working a primary client or a primary job, and they're going out and they're getting additional side projects. And so those people, regardless of how they get work, they're using the projects as supplemental. That's an interesting trend to see somebody pursuing a passion or building a business on the side of their full time job to supplement their income. Even on the side of their consulting work, they're learning new skills, they're reskilling. We should
Mhm.
definitely talk about reskilling too.
Yeah.
But when we talk about the ways that people find work, when we first started asking this question, people were really saying, I went to my former employer. I worked a 25-year career or I worked a 40-year career, and now I'm taking a step back. I'm consulting, and I just went right back in and consulted for my former employer. Maybe somebody had gotten out of the military. They were going to consult that way. That's a really common evidence too. So word of mouth and former employer were huge. We still see word of mouth as extremely large. Former employer has definitely dropped. These people are not necessarily going there anymore. What we see is the rise of online platforms and social media as a way that people find jobs. And this, I would say, stands to reason. Online platforms have become significantly more mature since we started asking this question 8 years ago in 2015. And social media has also become significantly more secure. So these people are going on LinkedIn, they're going to their network, they're going in Facebook groups or Instagram groups for our more direct to consumer type people. And they're also using platforms like the one we have at MBO. We have a marketplace and other marketplaces that are out there to put their resume out there, much like they might apply to a job on LinkedIn or Indeed, and increase their chances of getting independent work. The reality is, most people don't use it as their primary channel, but they use it as a viable
Mhm.
channel.
Yeah. I've had personally had a lot of success on the MBO marketplace, but I'm just curious. I've talked to so many consultants who sometimes see those types of online platforms as black holes where they're submitting and then don't hear anything back. And it gets to be frustrating. I'm curious what recommendations you might have, McLean, for those consultants who want to use that marketplace channel or that online platform channel to
Yeah.
acquire business. Um,
Absolutely. I think an online platform is very similar to applying for a job.
A full-time job, which is something that almost everybody has done at some point in their career. You're not just going to submit an online application and hope for the best. You're going to network with somebody. You're going to say, oh, I know somebody at this company. Can I get an intro to the hiring manager? You might write a tailored cover letter. You're really going to target your resume and showcase your profile and your experience. Those same criteria apply when applying through an online marketplace. And there are a few tips and tricks that I'd use within a marketplace. The first is take a look at the types of roles that you see posted within a marketplace, and even more specifically, the types of roles that you see posted for that client. What we see is that most of our clients use the marketplace for specific role types. Maybe they use it for software developers. Maybe they use it for management consultants. Maybe they use it for marketers and technical writers. They're going to index on a certain type of talent. And if you don't see your certain type of talent posted in that marketplace, you can certainly make a connection within the client and ask. It doesn't mean they aren't engaging those roles. Maybe it means they aren't using the marketplace for it. But see the types of roles and then read the role description itself. We do see that not all of our clients are actively hiring for the job, much like they would be on a full time site. We see them doing what we call talent pooling, gathering resumes for when they have a project. And this is particularly common with our management consulting type companies that are going to staff the independents to a client's engagement. So your client is X, their client is Y, you're being targeted for Z project. And take a look. Is this something that I'm going to hear back from today? Or is this something that I might have my resume collected for and hear back from in a couple of months? That's a really critical nuance, is that not everything is a job starting tomorrow. So casting a wide net is important, but casting a wide net in an area where you think you'll be successful. And then don't stop at just putting your resume in. Make connections, work within the client. And once you're in the client's pool, once you've worked with that client, it's a lot easier to get re-engaged. Just like you might say it's easier to move jobs internally than it is to start net new.
Yeah, those are such important tips. We a lot of times, for some reason, don't think about other ways to get in front of that client beyond the marketplace. And so, in addition to submitting that resume or your consultant's resume, making those connections within the company and figuring out how to get in front of that decision maker can be so valuable as well. It's almost
And
like,
I'll admit, we
yeah,
do a lot of work with the enterprises too to make sure that they're educated. It's not the same as a full time job. Let's
no.
make your interview process easy. I mean, we do as much education to the enterprise on best practices for
Mhm.
engaging consultants as we do consultants to engage with these positions. So, not a perfect science, but generally speaking, you can't just toss your rod in the ocean and hope that fish come to it. You have to do a little bit more work than that. And I think people think, oh, it's the internet, easy apply button. And it's
Right.
it's not quite that simple.
That's such a good analogy. Who got to find the right fishing spot, got to put the right bait on, all the things. That's such a good.
Absolutely. And I'm
Yeah.
like, please don't go any further with that fishing analogy because that's about as deep as my fishing knowledge goes. My dad would be horrified.
Me too. Me too. I have a few clients who are really avid fisher people, and that's all I've got to.
Yeah.
That's
We'll
so
leave it to
fun.
them.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so let's talk now. Another one of the trends that the report highlights, and again, we'll put the link to the show note in the full report so you can read all of it. But another of the trends that the report highlights is the acceleration in the number of independents. And I think you've been seeing this over this has probably been in the report most years, if not all of them. I'm just curious about your thoughts about, as this number of independents is increasing, and the competition grows for those of us who are already independent. I'm curious what you would recommend, McLean, both from what you saw in the report and the results, but also as a VP of marketing. What are your recommendations for those of us who are already independents? How do we stand out? How do we make sure that we've got a really strong value proposition and are not getting diluted by all of that additional competition?
Sure. So let's cover the numbers part of it first. So we
Okay.
see 64.6 million Americans as independent, and that number is divided into three tranches. So we have those people who are doing independent work occasionally. And we say that's people who are doing it every month, but not necessarily with a regular amount of hours every month. And that's actually the largest population of independents. That's about half of the total pool. And then we see the remaining pool divided between what we call part-time and full-time independents. And one of the reasons our survey is so widely cited is we're very strict in the way that this methodology is calculated. And part-time independents do it every week, but less than 20 hours a week. Full-time independents, more than 20 hours a week every week. And one of the things that we saw this year that was really particularly interesting is the number of full-time independents was really an explosive growth year over year. And so while the total number was large, we see the highest growth in those people who are doing it occasionally and those people who are doing it full time. These people do it for very different reasons. By and large, occasional independence, learning a new skill, pursuing a passion, and with this economy, increasingly supplementing their income. It doesn't speak to their experience. It doesn't speak to the quality of the independent. It just speaks to how often they're doing it. And they may be doing it occasionally on top of a full time job, and they may be a stay at home parent who is caring for children or caring for an elder and coming back into the workforce this way. So the reasons are manifold. But the number of full time independents really greatly increased this year, too. And we see that because it's less risky, because there are online marketplaces. Any of these trends we've talked about before are really reasons why people might go independent full time. But as you say, the competition creeps up when you see more people working this way. I prefer to see it as a glass half full. And I was independent before I came to MBO. I still have independent work. So I can say this not as somebody who's observing the trend, but somebody who's both observing it and doing it as well. And the reason I see the glass as half full and not more people yields more competition is the reason more people are doing this is because enterprises are more accustomed to working with independents. It is easier than ever before to start, run, and grow your business and to be successful doing so. And enterprises are saying, in order to be successful in the future of work, we need not just to engage full-time employees, but we need to engage independents. And so the amount of jobs out there is significantly actually greater than those who want to fill them. We more have challenges with our enterprises saying we struggle to get enough recs for that role to find the right person. Then we just have a glut of people. We had 700 people apply. It was very easy for us to call the shots. The worker has the power, not the enterprise these days, which is great for those people who are listening today.
Yeah, I think that's such an important part here, which is the supply might be going up in that, like you said, there's explosive growth in the full-time consultants and
So is
independents.
the demand.
And then the demand is also going up because of future of work. You touched on this, the future of work and enterprises, in some cases, innovating, and in some cases, I think being forced to be more flexible to bring on different types of talent, not just the kind of full-time employee sort of talent.
And in the highly skilled area, and I believe that's primarily who's listening today, which is great. In the high in demand skills area, enterprises just can't find enough people to do the roles that need to be done. They want somebody with AI experience, and you want somebody who's got great experience at a variety of companies, variety of industries. For those innovation, for those management consulting projects, it's really important that that person have current, relevant, and often experience across multiple clients. And they're going to come in, they're going to do a project for a few months. And then the needs of the organization as that project evolves is going to change. So it doesn't make sense for an organization to hire full-time employees. It makes sense for them to engage consultants. And we see enterprises increasingly coming to us. And instead of a few years ago saying, should I use independence? They're now saying, we know we are using independence and we know about how to classify them, which is something we've done for years. But can you tell us strategically what portion of my enterprise should be independent? What talent types should I tap into? And increasingly, on top of all of that, how do I become a client of choice, not just an employer of choice? So, how do I build a brand that's attractive to independence, which really means sort of an upside for all involved?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you just said also touches on that reskilling topic, McLean, that we were going to come back.
Absolutely.
Let's dive into that for a minute.
We've been covering reskilling at a macro level. We didn't ask the question this year in the state of independence, although we do every few years, that the data just doesn't change that much. But we ask about people's needs to retrain and reskill in the face of things like automation. Do we think it's going to take their jobs? And by and large, we had seen in fairly recent years somewhat low participation in people reskilling. But as we look around and we ask our community, we know that enterprises are greatly struggling with the need to train the next generation of workers, and they're thinking about how to do so. Again, we talked about AI briefly. We're looking at artificial intelligence to help that reskilling, but we're also looking at enterprises coming to us and saying, how do we prepare our workers for the future? Are there programs? Are there trainings? What can we be doing? So I'm going to give advice more than data on this. The advice that we give to independents is keep your skills fresh and current. It's better in many cases as an independent to be a mile deep and an inch wide versus an inch deep and a mile wide in your skills. And a constant hunger and thirst for learning is really necessary to be successful in the future of work, because an enterprise might say you have so much time for professional development, but as an independent, that expectation that you're going out there and doing development is there. So curiosity, being a self-starter, being motivated to continually learn is incredibly important. And then your practical experience out there with a number of clients is going to bring, a depth of experience that the average full-time employee just won't get.
Yeah, I think that's so important. If you're managing multiple clients at a time and shorter engagements, getting that kind of portfolio of experience that then you can take from one client to the next, and having those best practices that you're sharing with those clients is incredibly valuable in many cases compared to a full-time employee who's got one perspective.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we've really been highlighting lately, again, it's adjacent to the state of independence. It's more macro level data, but fits in here. So it's worth mentioning. If you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which provides data on average employment tenure in the United States, what we see is that right now, the average employment tenure for people of all ages is about 4.1 years. So every 4.1 years on average, across the whole working population, you're going to change jobs. But the younger the employee is, down to the Gen Zs, they're changing jobs less than every 2 years. Millennials once every 3.5. It's really the boomers who are sort of pushing the trend upward. And so when your workforce is turning over so regularly, as an enterprise, you have to think about reskilling and how are you going to get the right people in. But so much of success in a company is dependent on what you might call institutional knowledge, knowing people, knowing how things are getting done. And so I think a potential bright side for independents is they're seeing their employee workforce, companies are seeing employee workforce teams turn over. And so they can really come in with a defined skill set. They can make those relationships and they can not have to worry about breaking onto a team that's been doing
Mm,
something for many, many years.
yeah. Another one of the barriers that could have been an issue in the past is starting to break down.
I think that's a nice way to
Yeah,
put it. Yes,
that's
absolutely.
so many good opportunities. Let's switch gears for a second. McLean, you mentioned that you're also an independent. We both love travel so much. Tell us what you do on the what's
Sure.
your side gig. Yeah.
Yeah. My
I
side
don't
gig.
know if
My
it's a
side
side
gig, which
gig.
is
It's a
really
whole
pretty full time. Yeah.
corporation. Yeah.
So I came to MBO as an independent. I worked in content marketing and editorial consulting for many, many years. My background is luxury travel. I was a hotel inspector. And so 7 years ago, right about the time I started here at MBO, I founded a luxury travel advisory, which basically means I'm a high-end travel agent for high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals. And I've used the skills that I have built at MBO and many of the lessons that I teach people here at MBO to build my own business, which is now myself and 12 people strong. So my
That is not a
11
side
others.
gig. That
It's
is a
not,
corporation.
it's fantastic. And what I think is so interesting is I keep a foot in what consultants see every single day. I see how to build a business. I see the challenges in marketing. I see how do I get new clients? And what am I doing? Am I putting something out there on a marketplace? Am I advertising? Am I getting referrals? And I will say 95% of my travel business is referral because it's successful. Clients like me. Somebody says, oh, McLean would be a great fit for this. And that's quite frankly why I've taken on new independent consultants on my team because the team has grown organically. And I see people's comfort with using I'm going to call it a freelancer, using a targeted specialist for a project, really going up. And I see the need to continually expand your knowledge, the reskilling part that we've talked about, more important than ever. I need to be extremely well versed on changing policies, on which countries are coming up, which hotels are opening, et cetera. But at the end of the day, the thing that keeps the clients is, yeah, the creativity. Yes, there's great social media, all those things. Travel porn is very exciting, scrolling through Instagram, et cetera. I think I can say that. And, the wanderlust of travel. But what keeps people coming back is the fact that I'm reliable. I said, I'm going to get that to you in 24 hours. I get it to you. It's served in a technologically friendly manner. All my clients get their reservations via app. You've seen it. You've used our services. And that, not to brag, but I do a good job. I do a competent logistical job. And at the end of the day, yes, you as an independent, you have to sell your business. You have to do a good job selling it. You have to market yourself. But what the person is buying is, yes, your deliverable, but they're buying you. They're buying you and your expertise and your advice and your ability to package that up, deliver it well, and then move on and deliver the next project. And it's such a blessing to be able to do that every day, to work with people and to know they come back for me. So the advice I might extrapolate from my experience being independent here is your career is very, very viable. But if you do good work and you make good connections with the clients that you're working with, you should really never worry about the safety and security of your future career because it will continue to evolve naturally. I'm amazed at the few number of people who do this and do it well when somebody says, oh, I've used somebody else and it maybe wasn't as good. It's like, oh, all I have to do is be competent. Okay, this is great.
Yeah, and trustworthy. I can attest, like McLean said, we're going to be working on a trip to Europe soon, and I can definitely attest to just the ability to fully trust. You've been to a lot of these places personally and really understand the expectations. And when things go wrong, you're right there. So we'll put the link to your company in the show
Oh,
notes.
thank you.
Well.
Yes, I
Yes.
appreciate it. But to go back to MBO, the other thing that I think is interesting is I'm juggling multiple eggs in a basket. And MBO, I think of as I say, I have a large client outside of the travel industry, and I, devote my attentions to them. I manage their workload accordingly, but I treat MBO like a client. They are. They're a very large client of mine, and we have projects, we have deliverables, we have to manage it, and you can't be content as an independent. You can't just say, here's my job. I sat there from 9 to 5. I have to go. I have to hunt. I have to manage the team. I have to say, what can we do to grow this business? Because if I'm not constantly growing and achieving here at MBO, they're not going to be happy with my performance. And maybe they're going to look for somebody else. Like you can do a middling job for so long, but If your attitude as an independent isn't go out there and constantly hunt for your next meal, I don't think you're going to be a very successful independent. And so, if anything, that's the attitude I've taken from independent work over to my work with MBO. And that's also what we see from our most successful independents on the platform.
Yeah, I think that relates in so many different ways, whether you have kind of one pillar clients that you've got for, over a period of time, or a retainer client, or,
Yeah, never be content.
never be content. Yeah. Always demonstrating the value and thinking ahead, a few steps ahead of that client to help them see the bigger picture. Can be the difference between success and mediocrity. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important nuance is it's not that I'm not content to be constantly asking for more money, more responsibility there. It's to always think I can achieve and do better at the deliverables that I have and to prove my worth through a ROI, competence, the ability to always improve what the client is seeing as a bottom line.
McLean, one of the other trends in the State of Independence report is about teaming. And so tell us a little bit, especially for those of us who want to have a pretty minimal footprint, not build a boutique agency or firm or that type of thing. There's certainly people listening to this podcast that want to go that direction as well. So we can touch that in a minute. But for those of us who want to stay pretty lean without a whole lot of subcontractors working for us or that kind of thing, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing around the teaming trend.
Sure. I think as the independent workforce gets more mature, enterprises are increasingly growing comfortable with the teaming concept. And they're growing comfortable with the teaming concept in a way that's very friendly to independence. Previously, if you wanted to deliver a large scale project, you had to form, exactly as you said, a boutique agency or a boutique group of individuals. You had to sort of form your own net. And now enterprises are increasingly saying, listen, I'm going to engage people for skills. I need somebody to do X, Y, and Z and to build a puzzle around it. But they're also saying, I need to achieve this specific set of results. And however you achieve that set of results, okay, that's great. And it probably is a team of multiple different parts. It's multifunctional and different at different phases of the project. So we see teaming as a trend that's really greatly exploded. We're seeing, about 1 in 4 people saying that they're teaming, and we're seeing enterprises at the same level saying that's about what they expect, somewhere in the 25% range. And really what that is people, again, deep subject matter expertise, mile deep, inch wide type of scenario, really, really good subject matter experts partnering with other independents. And so the good news is you can do this by getting a really strong network and coming in and saying, we can deliver that project. But more and more enterprises are comfortable saying, I'm going to engage a team of independents, and these are the specific skills I need, and they're assembling their own team. So it works on both ways.
Yeah. Are there any anecdotes around this in terms of how you see independents successfully finding those people to team with?
It's a question of relationships for sure. And you may find yourself put on a cross-functional team to begin with and then maintaining those relationships. So I certainly would say to independents, just because somebody doesn't do exactly what you do doesn't mean they won't be useful. And one of my favorite examples of this is a guy named Wade Forbes, who's been in our network. I know you know him quite well. He started as a cybersecurity contractor with Booz Allen. He moved into becoming a graphic reporter and a graphic artist. And they were in a networking group that we at MBO had called Advantage. And he was talking to another woman on a federal project. And I didn't think they necessarily had anything in common other than having both been in the federal vertical. And the next I heard of it, this was a few years back, it's like, oh, yes, she and I are talking and I'm illustrating her proposals to make her proposals stand out. And I never would have thought that this really high up federal, triple security clearance contractor and Wade, although he had that background, were necessarily going to find commonality. But all of a sudden, he's illustrating her proposals. And so that was an example of they just made a connection and it worked. So as an independent, never think somebody can't be valuable to you. Always be thinking about how can I expand this project without necessarily expanding my business. And just because I don't have the skills to do it doesn't mean it can't be done. So I would highly encourage independents to polish that networking and overall sort of marketing of their own brand, and never discount too the power of just having a decent website that says, this is who I am and this is what I do. Because the number of people who say, you look competent on Google and email me for any type of work is just shocking to me. It's like, oh, you have no idea idea if I'm good at this or not. I mean, like to think I am, but like, no idea if I'm good at this or not. But I found your website. And so you will stand out that way too. Again, sheer competence comes back to win for people.
Amazing. I love that story too. I hadn't heard that before. It's such a good story.
Yeah. And
As you
hi, Wade, great guy. Hope he's listening.
Yes, absolutely. We'll put a link to his website in the show notes as well. Tell us a little bit, McLean, as you're thinking about what you saw in that State of the Union report and also just, what you do on a daily basis. If a listener is here wanting to grow their business over the next 12 months, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah. I think it really starts with a business plan. And this is something I think you gave a webinar on to our people at the end of the year. Really sit down and say, what do I want to achieve and what is it going to take to get me there? And I think a lot of people say, oh, this year I'm going to invest in marketing. This year I'm going to invest in social media. But I like to say, this is my goal and I'm going to work backwards to figure out how to do it. And I compare it to cooking. If I'm going to go make Christmas cookies and I want to make 6 types of Christmas cookies this year, I'm going to, list out what is it that I need? What are the ingredients that I need? All of those, types of things. Then I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to buy those ingredients. I'm going to plan out my schedule accordingly. And I'm not going to say, I need to make all 6 types of cookies at once. I'm going to take, and I'm going to say, I have to do this. Then I have to rest. Then I have to do this. And building your success in your independent career is much like that. When you set out to network, you need time for that to bake. When you do thought leadership, which I believe everybody should invest in, it's not necessarily going to have an ROI. It's simple actions done regularly with a plan towards the end result that will get you there. So some simple actions that independents can start today. I think contributing and making those connections through their network, LinkedIn is a great channel to do so. Establishing yourself as an expert in the area, whether you're comfortable creating blog posts or you're comfortable having a quick chat. It doesn't necessarily mean overly self-promotional. Maybe you could go do a guest post for somebody else, doing that with some regularity, networking with other independents and reaching out to contacts in your network, setting aside time for skills development, and then understanding what do I need to put in to achieve the output that I want. And always thinking that whatever you think you need to put in, you probably need to put 15 to 20% more into it than you actually planned for.
Yeah, I think that's so important. What I noticed is a lot of independents taking this more passively, thinking they don't have control over, I don't have control over whether or not someone's going to assign an agreement with me. I don't have control over who's open to having an independent and who doesn't. And we kind of build up this story around all the things we don't have control over. And while, yes, we might not have control over whether XYZ companies, engages us or not, we certainly have control over the macro direction of our business. And like you said, how many inputs we put in to get the outputs that we're looking for, and really looking at this in a way where you do have full control over whatever your goals are and achieving those and thinking about it from that perspective.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely never stop going for the next thing. If my client, and I'll use a travel example, if my client's just closed a great trip, I'm not going to be like, all right, let's talk about the next one. Let's talk about the next one. I'm just going to say, okay, go on your trip, enjoy. But I might have 20 proposals out there at any one point. And I know that I need to follow up with these people every week to say, okay, hey, have you read it? Where are you? I need to be checking the people whose work is coming up. I need to almost compare it to airlines. Let's go with that analogy. I love my analogies today. Can't you tell?
They're so good.
There are all these planes that need to land and they all can't land at the exact same time. So I need to do the work on my part to make sure that they land smoothly. And then as they're landing, make sure I have in the hopper other planes that are ready to take off and other planes that are in the air. So as an independent, you need to make sure you're working all channels. And I do think that's the difference between people who are successful as independents and who are not. There is an innate curiosity to never be satisfied and to always want to keep going to be successful at your independent work. Those people who are always saying, what's next? Not necessarily in a pushing or a striving way, but always going, I'm looking one step ahead, are going to be the most successful.
Yeah. The sentence, I'll put it in the show notes, is so good. Simple actions done regularly create these results,
1,000%.
Yeah. The feast or famine cycle that so many consultants experience is created by missing that simple mantra or that simple direction in your business.
Isn't everything's
turning
so
off the
simple.
marketing, turning on the
Yeah.
marketing, turning off the marketing, turning on the marketing. That's what ends up happening. And so what McLean was just describing, these simple actions, whether it's networking or thought leadership or, skills development, just doing a little sliver of that all the time versus kind of a big bang approach when you think you have time, some big chunk of time, which none of us ever end up having, can be the difference between success or failing or not getting where you want to go, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to hit on that some of the time versus all of the time, because there's a couple of threads that came out in State of Independence this year that dovetail into it. And I agree. Simple actions done regularly yield success in almost anything. Candidly,
Yeah.
I'm on my New Year's diet, aren't we all? And it's like, it's not about calorie restricting, and then binging. It's about you just being consistent, that whole 80-20 rule. And that's something that we're seeing most independents want to live by. We called last year's study the great realization, the realization of what matters to you in life. People came out of a pandemic and said, I'm going to reevaluate. We saw a lot of people quitting jobs that no longer served them, people going out and pursuing their passions. We continue to see that with the State of Independence, that people have a realization in their life. And a main reason people go independent is they're really good at what they do. Yeah, they can make more money doing it, but they have more control over their life. Our purpose has always been to give people the control to do the work they love the way they want. That's actually, what MBO was founded to do. And when you think about that whole flexibility, work-life control, that's a big reason why we see people going independent in such numbers. And it's a big reason that consistency matters. So you went independent for control, for work-life balance, to be able to take a little bit more time for you to do whatever matters. Maybe that's raising a family. Maybe that's practicing art. Maybe that's just feeling like you don't have to run ragged on somebody else's schedule. But the heart of that, having that control, is the control in doing those simple actions consistently. And so with flexibility, in order to obtain flexibility, or at least my mantra for independence is you have to have a massive amount of control to gain that flexibility. And you need to have a massive amount of discipline in order to enable that flexibility in other areas of your life.
Yeah, it isn't like a crash diet. It's just that consistency over the period of time that accumulates. I like to call it a value bank. You're basically adding value into a value bank, whether it's thought leadership or networking or just even simple kind of articles that you might be writing or webinars you're hosting, that kind of thing. Just adding more and more value to this bank over time. And then you don't exactly know who's going to extract a deposit or a withdrawal from the bank.
Absolutely.
But it's there. Yeah.
Yeah.
McLean, let's switch gears here before we wrap up. You work with enterprise buyers as part of your role.
Good portion of my job. Yeah.
Time. Yeah. People who are hiring independent consultants, engaging independent consultants. Tell us a little bit about what trends you're seeing with them and how they're thinking about buying consulting services.
Such a good question. And I think it's really important to have people know that MBO has helped people start, run, and grow their business for many years. But a big portion of our business is helping enterprises, what we say, engage, scale, and optimize use with their workforce. And so we see our enterprises in those buckets. Engagement means being able to find, sort of manage, and pay independence. It's something we've done for 20 years, very, very successfully, 20 plus. But the majority of enterprises say, I know I need to use independent professionals. I either need to, or I want to, or I am using it. I need to get a handle around it. But now, instead of using, I'm going to call it inefficient third parties, a la staffing firms, to get work done, I want to go directly to independents. I want to form a brand as a client of choice. And I want to figure out how to best leverage independence strategically as part of either what you might call a total talent management strategy or a future of work strategy. So what are the main things that we're working with on the independent side each day is simply called direct sourcing, going direct to independents. What benefits can enterprises get from that? And then how can they do so efficiently? So it's not, contrary to belief, about cost savings, although there are cost savings. If I were paying an independent $100 an hour, I'd pay a staffing firm maybe $150 to $170 an hour for that same talent. So yes, there's a cost savings, but it's about eliminating the middleman to get to the project right away, to get that work done fast. It's about getting the best skills, and it's about forming that relationship for a long-term future strategy. So a lot of work on education as to how this can be done. A lot of work diving into enterprises and saying, you're a large, complex company. What types of skills, what types of projects do you have coming up in the coming years so we can help you build a strategic plan? And then in tandem, go out and help you find that strategic pool of independence. And then those people that are doing so already are sort of on the next phase of their journey, which is, okay, I'm doing it, I'm saving money, I'm accessing top skills, but I want these people to think of me versus my competitor when I'm going to my next project. So they've gone a step beyond the tactical and they're going into, how do I build a brand to do this? How do I become a client of choice? And I think those are the clients that I'm most excited to work with because they're thinking beyond the day-to-day and they're really thinking to that next step.
Yeah. I think that's so interesting to think about it, that they're thinking just like we are. How do we become more attractive to independents? How do we pull the best skill, the best consultants for this type of skill that we need to fill? And not just seeing independent consultants as another vendor.
No, they're not a commodity. They are critical to the growth of your business. And if anything, our enterprises, I do believe, are fairly bought into that. They are bought into the fact that for high growth companies, for high skill projects, you do need independent talent. And this is across all the verticals that we work with, which covers, most of the major industry areas in the world today.
Phenomenal. McLean, we've covered so much ground today and so many good analogies too.
Probably more than you needed, but I appreciate everybody bearing with me.
Love all the analogies. Tell us, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on today that we haven't already?
I would say that, for those people who are looking for ongoing learning, State of Independence is great. And I think that there's a lot of good data in there that can back up things that you're doing in the workforce. But the insights section of our website is such a treasure trove of information for people. So MBOpartners.com/insights. We publish content every single day for both enterprises and for independents themselves. So a great way to keep your foot in this ongoing learning, a theme that we talked about, is to just simply read. So we have great content on contracts, on finance, on marketing, but take a look too at the challenges that enterprises are facing and better enmesh yourself in that terminology too. Most things are a 3 to 5 minute read. So if you wanted to add something to your reading list, highly encourage that.
It's a great resource. I recommend it as well. And sometimes I'm in there, so that's fun too.
You're in there about once a month. We love it. And Melissa does lots of educational webinars for our team. And then you'll be joining, I know, we have a February panel on a new report that's coming out tomorrow on life goals. So the report will be live, so I'm not sort of spoiling anything, but spoiler alert, independents are better at achieving key life milestones than traditional employees at every metric except for saving for retirement. So if I had advice, it is step up your retirement savings, independents. But that'll be a really fun one that comes out next month too.
Ooh, I'm excited to read about that. All right, McLean, as we wrap up here, how can listeners find you?
Yeah, sure. My name is McLean Robbins, and you can find me over on the MBO Partners website, so MBOpartners.com. And if you have any questions, happy to point you guys in the right direction. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. We'll see you again next year.
Thanks.
Thanks, McLean.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.